So, hi everybody. I am so happy today to have Rob here with me. Now, how this happened is again something that comes from synchronicity working at its magic. The fact that anybody who's watched any of my previous videos, and especially the one with Alan Green, where we go into the details of Shakespeare and what Alan's doing at the moment. And I got an email from Alan introducing me to Rob Cumber. And at the very same time as this happened, up on my YouTube channel came the fact that Pam Gregory, I'm sure a lot of you follow her as well, and this interview with Rob came up. So I've got two sides. I've got Alan sending us an email, putting us together, and then Pam coming up as well. And I'm thinking, right, okay, there is definitely something in this. The way that my life is going and a lot of people's at the moment, we're all on this path and we all obviously need to connect with everybody. So I am very pleased to say that we have Rob with us today, and we are going to be delving in to his amazing book called The Lost Octave. And as I've just been saying to him, I cannot wait to get my hands on it, to start going through it. And I thank you for being here, Rob. I know you're really busy at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, and working tirelessly to create this compendium of a book. But yeah, it's going to be such a beautiful gift, and I can't wait for people to go through that journey that that I've been on since the Lionsgate last year.
Yes, I saw that. So just for everybody out there, because I know obviously you've done a few interviews before, but just can you explain to people what actually happened on 8/8 and how you came to obviously get this amazing transmission?
Yeah, no, it's really beautiful because that it's always been a beautiful time. That 8/8 portal. It's like intrinsically something always amazing happens at that time, especially sort of in my life. And so, I was creating my own modalities, and that's what I've been doing over the last 7 years, and taking people through journeying through consciousness and exploring all those avenues with the energy systems. And I had come across in the previous months an astrological map that was linked to the I Ching, and it's from a system called Human Design. And all I did was I saw that map, and sort of registered it, and I thought, oh, okay, just that's another thing to sort of go into and maybe learn, and just as you do all these different fields. And so it was really on the Lionsgate that this sort of impulse to look at that map again was like so strong. I just woke up that morning, did a little meditation. It was just like, look at this map. I'm like, okay, it's just that impulse. So I'm looking at this map and thinking, okay, like signs, and that it's auspicious because it's the alignment of into Sirius, our galactic central sun. And so and it's connected to, it's in Leo, so you've got the Lion King energy, you've got the Sphinx, you've got Egypt, you've got all of that tradition that's there. And of course, what's interesting is that as we move into the age of Aquarius, not a lot of people know this because when you study the stars, but when you move into the age of Aquarius, the sign that's opposite it is Leo. So it's not just a movement into the age of Aquarius, it's a movement into the age of Leo, but now from the past. So like Leo, or the ancient Egyptian time, becomes our sort of connected past as we move forward to push us into that Aquarian age. So I'm there studying the map, and it's, for people that don't know, so the I Ching is what they call 64 hexagrams, so 64 possibilities. And so when I'm looking at this map, I could basically see that it didn't quite work mathematically. There was something else there. It is geometrically perfect in itself, but I just felt like there was something there. So I just sort of I could feel this weight of something that was just there, like, in a cloud, wanting to come in so strong. And I thought, okay, so I just started to draw and just see how I could break this down. And that's very much what I sort of do, is almost like reverse engineer what's presented and see how it was actually constructed. You know, a bit like that sort of Metatronic energy. You know, it's like the building blocks of creation. And so as I was doing that, I laid out, you know, it's very simple. I laid out 60 hexagrams on the outside, because 64 in a circle isn't very common. Whereas in a circle, well, there's 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour. Well, that makes sense to a circle. So as I did that, I had the 60, which left me 4, and I put those in the center as the 4 cardinal directions, as you would, very methodically, right? So it's there. So now I've got sort of this inner landscape and the outer landscape. Well, of course, there's 12 signs of astrology. So when you draw 12 lines from the center going outwards to create the astrological wheel, well, then that reveals that there's 8 missing gates. Right? So you have 4 cardinals in the center with 12 spokes going out. So there's 8 in the center that are missing. And so I'm like, whoa. So 64 hexagrams is linked to a cube, right? So it's matter, so it's a cube.
Yes.
Well, when I did this process, I'm linking it to time. So now we have matter and time now in unison. And what was revealed was there was a lost octave. And I say lost because really what I didn't know then, but I later sort of started to remember that this was a verbal transmission given to initiates of the I Ching. And of course, when you're given sort of those last master teachings, and I call them the 12 master gates. And so when you're given those teachings at the end of any sort of initiation, they're always verbal. They're never written down. The ancient tantras are the same, you know, these secret mantras that are passed on. And so it was like this sort of revelation of remembrance and, you know, wow, they're something that is, you know, the I Ching originally was like 8,000 years old. And to what we know today is like 5,000 years old. So to find something in something that's been so studied for thousands of years on this day was like, okay, this is auspicious. And so that's really when it started to unfold. So after I had that, it just was like, okay, just keep receiving, keep going through that process of show me how this works, reveal it all. And, you know, just, and it was such a beautiful experience, you know, of this. And of course it was 8-8 Lionsgate, and I've revealed an octave, which is 8. So like all of these auspicious things were happening. And as you'll see in the background, the picture of Aphrodite, Botticelli's Aphrodite, and it's all connected to Venus. And so when I was sort of aware of like, well, what is in the sky at the moment? What is happening on the planet that I'm having this? And Venus was in Leo. And of course, the 8-pointed star, which you see behind me, which we'll go into more of the geometry of, that is the ancient symbol for Venus. So all of these synchronicities were building this picture, and I realized it was this divine feminine energy that was coming in as like a teaching of this lost wisdom, because really you can learn this one octave and then you know all 72 gates. So obviously when you have the 64 plus the 8 lost octave gates, you end up with 72, and 72 is probably one of the most auspicious numbers in spirituality. And, you know, my first thought of it was like the ancient Hebrew name of God.
Yes.
And so all of a sudden now we've got the highest teaching in the Hebrew mystery teachings with the Chinese I Ching, with Venus. And I'm thinking, wow, it was like you touched on a point that was like universal. And, you know, that's really where I say, you know, so it's Sophianic wisdom. And Sophia means wisdom. And so this is where it's like, wow, this is the divine feminine transmission for this Aquarian age to, you know, not only help us move through this transition period, but to really understand what we need to know and how to be empowered within that Aquarian age so that we can really move forward as a collective.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. And not surprising to the fact of the on my website, my main photo, I'm stood on Aphrodite's rock in Cyprus.
Amazing. Great place to be.
Yeah, I used to live in Cyprus. So
Beautiful.
yeah, so that's where my awakening happened, and a lot of connection with the Essenes and everything. But that is interesting that you should say that, because obviously is you're aware. I don't know if you've ever visited Aphrodite's Rock. It is a place of power. It is a portal itself. So it's very interesting to what you say. Amazing.
And so, things like the synchronicities just build from there. And it really is just, doing this, like, which is really interesting, because a lot of the time, say, people would write a book that is, they know that knowledge and then they write it. For me, it was sort of, I was literally learning from that universal thread, going through it, compartmentalizing what's been known, the ancient stuff, with what is coming in. And so I was very much learning as I'm doing, but it's so instant and so clear. So, even like the synchronicities, for example. So with so the 8 times 8, so is 64, right? So there's 8 octaves of 8. Well, when you add in the last piece, that's another octave. It takes it to the 9th octave. And number 72 is a 9, right? And so we've got this 8 and 9 connection. And so my life path number is a 9, right? So it was like, okay, I'm starting to see how this thing's going. And as I was working with this, it actually answers one of the most challenging mathematical questions that there is, which is the squaring of the circle.
Right.
And if people aren't familiar with it, it's basically how you understand to build the philosopher's stone on, on lots of different levels, the alchemy of it, the mathematics. So the 64 is a cube. So that's the 8, right? So that's the connection. Well, when you add in the 72, that's the 9. And the 8-9 relationship is the squaring of the circle. So this is why the 72 is like the feminine circle coming in to bring that in to match the straight line masculine of the cube. And so now we've got this beautiful union now on an archetypal level in collective consciousness with the I Ching, so that it's no longer just a binary code. It's now able to move into that next layer, which is the 4th dimensional mathematics. And that's really where it's showing the expansion of, as we were discussing, about the tesseract and, what a hypercube is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really how I started to develop it from there.
Fascinating. It is when we're even talking about numbers, because mine's 8.
Oh. Yeah, and you're linked to the cube, right? You like the Metatron's cube, yeah. So yeah, it's perfect.
Just like that, just amazing. Like I said, obviously this, like I said to you, this is I'm having a lot of aha moments, and obviously with what we've discussed as well. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, so I can explain a bit more about the
yes, please.
So, if people aren't familiar, so the 8-pointed star, it goes all the way back to sort of the Babylonian and the Mesopotamian times of different versions of Venus. So it was the star of Inanna, which is, one of our oldest stories in cuneiform is the story of Inanna, the story of her descent into the underworld. And then as the morning star, she descends into the underworld, and then she gets rebirthed and becomes the evening star. So it's all astrological, that story. And that's one of our earliest stories. So this 8-pointed star, as I say, it's Inanna, it's Ishtar, it's Venus, however we want to, all the different names. And so when you look at the 2D version, so what you can probably see behind me is like the main star is the 2D version. Well, as I went into this, it's really interesting, obviously the 8-8 Lionsgate. So I did this drawing and I was like, that feels like that's the octave. I knew it was Venus, it was all there, but it was like, there's something more. Well, I felt like it just came to me. It felt like the energy was like hyperdimensional. It was like it was almost like the etheric plane. And so I just looked and I thought, oh well, you know, I could make that into a hypercube, right? Because essentially it's the same image. Well, what happened when I did that was, as I started to draw a hypercube in four dimensions, which is essentially just four cubes put together, you end up with, I don't know if you can see it, there's a star, the 8-pointed star within the star.
Yes.
This geometry is a hypercube. So the 8-8 and the star within the 8-pointed star within the 8-pointed star, and that takes us into the fourth dimension. It was like the synchronicities of all of this was like, wow. And so that is a tesseract. So a hypercube is a tesseract, and very simply, it's essentially just a cube inside a cube. And that's why I say it's a star inside a star. And so, you know, that is mirrored, you know, in things like the Great Pyramid of Giza. So you have the king's chamber and then the sarcophagus. So the sarcophagus and the king's chamber, it's a hypercube, it's a stargate. And this is the Venus stargate. So all of this was just coming in and making so much sense about how we're moving into Aquarius, how we're moving as a collective consciousness, is that we've understood, say, the four elements, we've understood matter, we're starting to understand, you know, geometry and all these things, and in a way like the matrix of things. But now we need to push further in our consciousness into, well, how does this work multi-dimensionally? And of course, it's sort of like a word that's banded around like, well, how does that even affect my life? But we're doing it all the time because the fourth dimension is time. So it's now about matter and time relationship. And that goes all the way back to my discovery of putting matter around the wheel in time. So from the very beginning, how I discovered all of this was understanding time. And of course, that connects into the great precession of the equinox, because as we go further away from our binary star Sirius, which is where the Lionsgate transmission is, we're locked in like a Vesica Pisces with Sirius as our central sun. As we move away in the precession from it, time in a way kind of gets slower and everything gets longer. And so that is where it is more connected to matter, the density. As we go back round, which we're on now, we're on that whip cycle and we're moving forwards towards Sirius. Time speeds up. And so then we become less matter and more light density. And so that is reflected in the precession of the equinox, because 25,920 years is the long cycle. And that number, every single geometric shape, all of the platonic solids, everything that you're saying about connected to Metatron, all of that fits into that cycle like a glove. Now, when you move into the fast cycle, it's 24,000 years, which is the ancient Yuga cycles. And that's been spoken about in the holy science books of Sri Yukteswar. So there's a difference between the two cycles that we're moving through. And we're now moving through the time where everything is speeding up, as we can feel.
Yes.
And it's less about matter as we know it and more about the understanding of matter as hyperdimensional. And so in our lives, everything is run by time. But we've been looking at what we do in time, seeing that that's the boundary, the construct, rather than realizing that our consciousness, you know, as you know, it's timeless. We can go forwards and backwards in time, you know, and that's why I say this book is like, it's from the future, from the Aquarian age brought back into now. But of course that now is being created, or that future is being created now. So it's this beautiful understanding that really all timelines are accessible here. And we've not really gone into that. Even now, the quantum is now understanding that consciousness is non-local, i.e. it's not connected to a point of time and space and matter. You can be everywhere.
Yes.
So this is why, you know, I feel it's this Aquarian, you know, Uranus energy of expansion, breaking our beliefs, going into that next understanding in union of time and matter, masculine and feminine, squaring the circle. It's all, it has to be a unified field, a unified consciousness in order for us to move into that understanding.
I'm having so many aha moments. It's untrue. So obviously at the moment, you know, everything's about the divine feminine. You know, the divine feminine obviously coming back in. Everybody's talking about Mary Magdalena. The whole aspect of that is huge. Everybody that I speak to at the moment is on that path, is the information that people are getting. Me, myself. So can you go into anything about that, what's happening regarding all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so good, thank God. Like, first of all, second of all, I've always thought it's really interesting when I was receiving this, you know, because obviously Venus is very connected to Pisces, which is my sign.
Okay.
And so, you know, and in my sign, the story of Andromeda is there. And Andromeda essentially is the archetype of Mary Magdalene or the feminine Christ. And so that is this energy of where we're going. And so in a sense of understanding this is that what happened with the book and what happened inside me was this understanding that of this pole shift. So, and that's what's going to happen on the earth. So the earth is overdue a pole shift. And you know, many people, when you speak about this, and when I first learned, I'm like, what? Like, how is that gonna, how? But it's happened so many times before, and it happens at the end of an age and a beginning of a new one. And that's really where you get the, excuse me, the cataclysms.
Yes.
You know, where the waters shift and they flood, or, you know, there's droughts. And so that's why we see that there's a desert somewhere that was like plentiful because of these pole shifts. Because what happens is that the magnetic force of the earth gets weaker and weaker and weaker, and the pole gets more wobbly. And so everything's chaotic and seems to be turning upside down, literally our lives, like the society, everything's going sort of quote unquote wrong, but actually it's falling into place in a new configuration. So when I say this pole shift happens, is what I experienced in this transmission was that we have this pole shift, which you can see as either it's the spirit and the human, or like the immortal or the soul and the human experience, or the balance of the masculine and feminine, or from the masculine point of view into the feminine. However, whatever balance it is, it's now flipping, because how this book is written is through the etheric universal view of having a human experience, not the human experience trying to have a spiritual one. And it's almost like this is the true home of ourselves.
Yes.
And so this is what this book is sharing, that if we can do this process, and that's what the book's about really, is that as you go through it, you will naturally make this pole shift. And if we can all do this internally, then that will then reflect on the external. And so then we can start to avoid the cataclysms and everything that's going to come into this new age. And we can make it a smoother progression. In a way, it's like it's the Venus is birthing us literally into the age of Aquarius and giving this wisdom to say, we need to be conscious of this. This is how we're going to perceive the world. And it is very much, it's almost like a collective first view. You know, it's like, I know that my part in this world affects everything else because it's all linked. So it's almost like everything that you then do, you have that in your mind of, you know, I have to be very conscious of what I'm doing, how I'm connecting with people, the words I'm expressing, the actions I'm doing. You know, it's all a movement into this one funneled direction. And so that's really the gift of this book, is to invite people into this and explore it from this. Yeah, in a way you could say it's like a top-down view, but really it's the, you know, divine feminine view of how consciousness is and how the world should really is ready to take shape, I should say.
And when we say, obviously we're talking about the divine consciousness, people just think, some people think that that's just a feminine attribute, but as we know, you know, it's in all of us. you know, whether you're a male, female, you know, it's bringing, like we've just said, it's the balance, it's bringing those two together now,
Mhm.
isn't it? You know, so it's not necessarily the fact of whether, you know, it's not just a female thing, although there are now a lot of females out there that are stepping in to their power, and that you can see where this is definitely going, Rob, with everything that you're talking about, because we're bringing that energy back into to literally balance that up.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, beautiful, exactly, and that's where I feel it was really interesting for me, being a male, delivering this message really of bringing the divine feminine into empowerment and into the fore, because it's almost like showing that the masculine can use this wisdom, embody this wisdom. It's not that it's separate to you, it's integrated, and it's a necessary thing. And actually, this book not only shows the connection to Venus and all the divine feminine teachings, it actually opens the door into the true divine masculine path, as it's also connected to the original Knights of the Round Table, the Knights of the Rose, or the Brotherhood of the Rose, and of course the first original non-distorted version of the Knights Templar, because really they were there to protect that which was most sacred, which is the Grail, which is the divine feminine, as you know. So it's an invitation for everyone, and even the inner masculine within the feminine. It's saying, like, to embrace that true understanding of the divine masculine as the protectors of the Grail, to uphold that tradition, and to serve. To serve the Grail is like to serve the whole. And so I think it's so beautiful because you move into this work perhaps through astrology or perhaps through the I Ching, and it goes so much deeper into that it's speaking to the collective archetypes and what we are going through as a planet, and that's why it's come in so fast. I mean, this book it's huge. It's 600 pages, diagrams, all of this stuff in there, and it will be out in May, and so that would be 9 months. So I've never written a book before. I'm not really a reader. I don't really buy books and sit there and read. That's not my thing. So literally it came through, and there I am. I'm writing like thousands of words a day, like from nowhere. And so it's showing that when you sort of like jump on this wave,
Yes.
the amount of things that can come from it when you just open into it and allow it to go through, it's like, wow. And that's why I say it's like learning on the job, but it's like it. It's almost like you're receiving it and instantly integrating it, because there's no sort of resistance on that universal level. You're not sort of going through different personality traits or things like this. You're just in that field, discovering what's there and bringing it into a cohesive format.
I'm finding that, and a lot of people are finding that as well, that are on this path. Like you say, that part of our work is obviously with, if you're on the spiritual path, is balancing your emotions.
Mhm.
So anything that you're going through is to the fact of being able to bring and center yourself very quickly. Whereas before, we probably would be going through it for months or even years with various people, in the dark night of the soul. But I think now with people that are on this path, when you've got the tools, and I think your book is obviously a very important part of that as well, it gives somebody the ability, when you're going through life and you're going through a spiritual awakening, awareness, that when you go through, and it's not all great, is it? It's not all roses, unfortunately. But when you are going through what we class as a bad time, you can go through it quickly and align yourself quicker and understand it quicker to carry on your path and on to the next bit.
Yeah, no, and that's so perfect to lead into what this book revealed, which is the law of octaves, right? And so it's universal teaching that came through, and it's so beautiful because, like you said, this book is like a toolbox in a way, because it gives you all the universal patterns that you can apply to any part of your life. And so the law of octaves is one of them. And the first part of that, which is very simple, is that the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning. Right? And so we've all known this, that, you know, once a cycle ends, it's really a birthing of a new one. And so the way in which I love to do this is that if you know the end at the beginning, then even when you're going through those struggles and times, you already know that the movie is going to have a happy ending, a happy outcome. So you start to see that as like, oh, this is happening to me. And it's like, no, okay, this is the necessary thing I need to go through to get to where I know that I'm going to get. So that's the beauty of why I say everything's reversed, because, you know, we normally narrate a story of like, you know, in this position, moving forward, evolving. But actually, if you knew the end of the movie at the beginning, it doesn't take away from the movie. It actually allows you to enjoy it fully, especially when it comes to our lives. You know, like these are tough things that we go through. So if you already know that that is what's going to happen at the end, then you can take it in stride and go, okay, I'm going to go into this. I'm not avoiding it. It's part of the journey. And, you know, it's like we know that we buy a certain movie, not because all the main actors are going to die at the end. We buy it because we kind of know that somewhere something's going to succeed. So if we apply that to our lives, then that's the law of octaves. And we can understand cycles, we can understand nature again, we can understand the endings and new beginnings. And so that's what I think so beautiful about this, is it's such a simple teaching. And it shows that everything works in harmonics, everything's all in ratios, everything's all connected in phases, you know, like all the musical notes. So I had to learn music theory for this. So it was literally like one weekend, it was like, oh, you know, obviously it's called the law of octaves. So I had to, so there's that deep breath of like, okay, I'm going to enter this chapter, boom, into this. And it was like, and it was amazing. And that's how I managed to expand, not just from the 8 lost gates, but I managed to incorporate the 4 cardinals that were in the center. None of those gates connected to any of the same zodiacs. So they were all different. So I couldn't believe it. So all 12 that were in the center linked to the 12 astrological signs perfectly, mathematically and geometrically and harmonically. Like I didn't say, oh, that's what that is. Like it was all done through a process of, you know, all the maths and everything else. So it ended up being what it was. It's not me doing it.
Yes.
And so I couldn't believe that in the central core, like the hypercube, the central core is the nucleus of 12 master gates. And then on the outside were all the other gates. And so this is the sort of the patterns that you start to see. This is the hypercube in geometry. This is the gates. And so it just kept on unfolding, you know, more and more and more. And as you say about Mary Magdalene and this coming back in, this is where the birthing of the solar feminine as an archetype is there. It's always been there.
Yes.
We're so used to connecting to the lunar as feminine and solar as masculine. Well, now we're introducing the other polarity of them each. So we've got a lunar masculine, which I've written about in the book, and a solar feminine. Well, now we've got 2 pairs of divine unions, which is the quaternary. And then that's really where I went into with the book about, I've developed a psychology called quaternary psychology. And so that's how you can go through the book.
Wow. It's amazing what happens to you when you're on this path and like what you have received. And I can only imagine when you start putting these numbers and geometries together and everything starts to fit. I know what it's like with me. You just look at it and it's got to have been like such an awesome moment for you.
Yeah, it's just, as I say, the funny thing is, because when I received all of this and it was just there, you know, it's like you're just dialed in and it's just coming through. You know, I was like, okay, I'm going to try and disprove everything that I've discovered and see if I can figure out. And it was so funny because the more I tried to disprove it, the more everything clicked into place. And it made me look in other areas that I never saw before. And so going back to the 12, well, that makes it a chromatic octave. So the white keys, let's say on a piano, that's your octave. Well, the black notes the black keys that are on top, that's what makes it 12. So now you've got this 12 and 7 and 12 relationship, which really completes as an 8 and 13. Well, that mirrors in the stars. And so we've now got this understanding of the 12 constellations around the one. Well, that's the fruit of life, right? The 13 spheres. That's Metatron's cube. It's like, so that's where this 13th zodiac sign has been, come into popular understanding. And so that's the central core of any wheel, is the 13th, which is the divine feminine number. And of course, that's why it's been used as sort of like, oh, that's a negative number, stay away from that. Yeah, they want you to stay away from that, because that's the key. If you understand the 13 as the divine feminine, she's the dream weaver that's weaving the whole dance. So keep you away from that, because if you keep you in just the 12, you're going around and around the wheel without ever going into the central core of that hypercube, into the fourth dimension. So
wow. You say it, wow, you're blowing my head. That is just absolutely fascinating. And again, like for me, like we've discussed previously, that puts forth so many things into place for me, as we've discussed it earlier before we came on, and you all missed it. But wow, right.
Yeah, so it is very much, I would say, an aha moment. That's why I say it's lost, because whenever you see this, and when you see all this stuff, it's not, although it feels new, it's also going to feel like, oh, that makes sense. That is what I've always felt. That is how I feel that it should. And so this is where it draws that pole shift to happen within you, because it's just in a way showing you what you already know, but you just perhaps didn't have the context, and now you've got it's very much left and right brain imbalance, this book, because it's all about the stories and the creatives and all of that, but it's got all of the hertz frequencies, all of the music, all of the geometry, all of the math. So it's got both, so that really whatever you want to go into, you can learn both with ease, and they complement, rather than thinking oh, it's a left brain thing about astrology and the degrees. But if you don't care about that, don't read that part. Like, go into the story, because you're going to get the same echo. It's just that we go into it for different reasons at first, and then you realize that actually you went into it to learn the other side, the other pole shift, and that's what really the book's about.
Well, I must say, and I mean, obviously, like I said in the beginning, I can't wait to get the book. But even in our brief discussion and what you've said so far, I've already myself had so many aha moments. You've already put so much together for me, which and I'm sure there's lots for me to unpack. And this is what happens, isn't it? Like you start to get the other pieces of the jigsaw, and I've already said this millions of times about this to lots and lots of people. We all have an aspect of that jigsaw, and it's like you and Robert, you come together, and suddenly those pieces are put together, and look what you create. And it's constant, it never stops, does it? It's like that. I've written lots of things down, and I'm and it will continue after our conversation, and especially obviously when I get your book as well. It's going to be ding 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 ding.
Yeah, and that's why I say, it's like it really is a sort of it's a set of teachings, it's a toolkit, it's a transmission, it's an invitation to move into this flow. And in the book, it speaks about the book itself is the initiation of ether. We've done the earth, the water, air, and fire, and that's kind of where we've been. And so that's why I say everything's a quaternary, because once you understand the quaternary of things, so we're used to trinities or binaries. So when you move into the quaternary, you balance all four elements, And then in the very center, you've got the quintessence, because quint means five, which is the fifth element, ether. And, you know, this is that initiation of understanding the ether, understanding time, understanding space. And, you know, it's not just about a lofty idea, it's you move through time and space in your life all the time. And so when you see it from that universal view, which is the ether, it really changes everything in you that you do. And you're not trying to connect into anything anymore. It's like, it's just there. Like the field is, you know, there's no distance between you and the field. It's not trying to meditate or align or, you know, it's just there. And so that's why this book's managed to happen so fast and be so clear, because it's like, what do you need to know in this now moment? And as long as you can be present to that and observant to that, you know, and you can be going around your daily tasks, you know, I mean, when I was receiving this whole, you know, transmission, it's not like I was sort of sitting there just in meditation or out of body, or, you know, it was so just like, you know, I made some breakfast, I sat there, I was just letting it come through, drawing some things. And it was like just really normal, but it was like so auspicious. And that's what I think that's to sort of show that it's about being connected to the earth and bringing heaven, you know, the heaven is the earth, you know, so it's the combination of yin and yang. But, you know, not that there's a bridge. That rainbow bridge is now a rainbow aura. You know, it's like it's here. It surrounds you like a spherical consciousness. And so, you know, this is where the invitation is to say, like, you go through the book, you learn the tools, you go on the journey, and you don't have to do anything. Just by, like you're saying, you're hearing it, receiving it. It's like, oh, that clicks, that clicks, that clicks, and it just naturally evolves you into this understanding. And that's why I think it's really for everyone. You know, there's nobody that it's not for, even if you don't know anything about astrology, you know, anything about the human DNA, anything about geometry, like none of it. You can just walk into this and learn, and you would have probably more tools than, you know, the majority of most people that study for you know, many years.
And I think also as well, you know, a lot of times with what you've got and what you've transcribed, as we talked, you know, it is a quantum, it's from the quantum. You know, it's on a quantum level. So even to the fact of, you know, they're opening the book and okay, they're reading the words, but it's not necessarily the words that they're getting, it'll be the vibrational aspect of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was so beautiful you say that, because I was speaking to a lady that she said I don't even know what you were speaking about, really. You know, she saw me and she said, I don't really know. I just felt that was the right thing. And so this is why it's so beautiful, because I don't, you know, it's just for me to present everything, you know, that's come. And that's why I say in the book, it's called The Way of Transparency. And so that kind of goes hand in hand with the initiation of ether, is that it's just about, you know, I show everybody all the calculations, how it was done, everything's there. Nothing's like left like, oh, well, they kept that bit as a secret. It's like, no, it's all there. Like, go and look at it all yourself and discover it, because it's so beautiful when you are transparent in your life, because that means that then, well, if you're transparent, well, there's no blocks to you. There's no limit to you. You're everywhere. You know, there's nothing you can't know or can't experience, because you're now not bound by, you know, those four elements. You have to have those four elements in balance, so that then you can, in a way, then move into that field. And then what's beautiful is that, you know, we speak a lot about, like, say, our quantum and things like this, but this really was fascinating, because I managed to then grow the I Ching with what I say is that the book of changes, which is what the I Ching is called. I say that the book of changes is changing, right? It would make sense, right?
Yes,
the book
of
changes.
Like, yeah.
And over the thousands of years, it has. And so as I was doing this, I actually managed to align the I Ching into quantum mathematics through this.
Right.
So now all of a sudden, and it's like, well, what benefit is that? Well, that means that your natal chart is now a quantum imprint. that's aligned mathematically, geometrically, musically to the quantum field. Well, now that's bridged, and that's all connected to your DNA.
Yes. Oh, I'm
So
getting
we've got
shivers.
we've got a clear pathway now from literally amino acids. I mean, I had to learn, I learned the human genome in a weekend. Like it was just like go into that's how the music happened.
Like you do, Rob, like you do.
Yeah, it was like I sort of looked at it like I don't know where to start. It was like wow, it looks so like okay. And once you get into you just start, and that's like the book. You just start, and then it's actually the patterns are all kind of reflecting, and it's like oh okay. Once I got the hang of it, it's just another language to learn. It's like, and that's why I say it's universal languages. So, I learned the human DNA genome. I learned all the amino acids, all of the genetic coding and how it works. And it's like, but then when I pieced it all together, it was like, oh, that fits, that fits, that fits. And there wasn't one thing that didn't fit. And that means that we can now look at the very amino acids and, DNA report that you can get done. You can take that and move it through every single field, connecting harmonically to the quantum. Well, like that's huge. There's no like disjointed subject. It's like take any which way you want to measure it, any which way you want to experience it. And that means then that we can apply this simply things like once you know the frequency hertz that's connected to your gate, your natal chart, you could go online and look up 444 hertz. And that is the sound of your sun gate. So you can listen to your natal chart in music. Well, that's huge activation by really not even doing anything. You're just remembering the sound vibration. And so there's going to be endless things that you can explore off of this and healing, different healing modalities, different things. And I've connected this to say crystals. It's all connected to tarot. It's connected to mystical powers. It's connected to the 72 angels. It's like, it's just a hub and it all fits. And that's why, when I took the Hebrew language and the Chinese I Ching, they all fit together so perfectly. And and every tradition, every mystical mystery school all fits in all of the astrology. So yeah, it's just a great invitation to go into the very hub of the ether, into the divine matrix, and start to be a conscious co-creator.
You blow me away. It just like you say, the applications for it are wow, literally massive, aren't they? Huge.
Yeah, and I think that even into new research as well. I touched on this a little bit. Spoken about it was about the maternal DNA, the mother DNA, which is called mtDNA. And so, when I presented the Lost Octave to a scientist who knew about the genetic code, he basically said, like, this looks very much similar to the maternal mtDNA. Like this lost gate looks like it fits that same pattern.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, really? And so he said, oh yeah. And he said, oh, we actually have, 2 lots of DNA. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like not just, we have the 2 strand, but we also have another one. So, well, where was that hiding? That wasn't spoken of. And so that whole section of DNA, that whole new line, so to speak, that's all the mother line. It's the maternal line. And so this is where it was really amazing for me that, I'm receiving this through Venus and all of that. And all of a sudden it applies to, he said, basically, this could be a blueprint as to where for us to look, where to find and open up this part of DNA. Because for them, it's like a huge soup, it's a massive field that, well, where do you start? And so when they have indicators of, well, that should be there, then they can apply funding to that and make that project. Whereas when they don't know where to look, well, nobody's going to fund that part. And so that's where it's beautiful. And this was mirrored in the King's Chamber. when Robert Grant was doing the petroglyphs on the walls,
Yes.
and then I said to him, "Oh, they're the deacons of
Yeah.
astrology. They're all astrology." Then I could tell him and predict which images would be where on the wall. And so as we were scanning the room, he was saying, "Oh, there's this image there." And I said, "Oh yeah, well that's the fish, because there's a fish there." And there was a fish on the wall.
Wow.
So we're now, through that sort of coding, we're sort of able to predict where things are going to be and the evolution of how things are going to move forward. And so, it's really, that was, for me, that was quite mind blowing, because we tried it several times. We went around the whole room, and everywhere we looked, everything was in the same order. Like, it wasn't even like one thing out, or what's that, or that's weird, or it doesn't fit. Everything fits. And, again, it's like the pyramids, thousands, perhaps 13,000 years old, and up to date, these things haven't been found. And yet here we are, we were just on a Zoom call with an app, and we're finding these things. And so I just think that, putting this in the hands of everybody else, like these patterns and this wisdom, that's why I feel it's going to be a movement of where people are going to have their own, they're going to explore these parts themselves, and then they're going to be able to produce amazing things from this. And so, I feel super privileged, really, that I'm able to put it into the book how it is, and to basically give it back to people and say, this is the wisdom we should have had.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's the applications for it are, like I say, it just goes on and on and on, doesn't it? But then again, obviously, like the fact it is quantum, it obviously will do. What was I going to ask you? I think the other thing that I was going to say to you was about, obviously you've spoke a little bit about the Knights Templars, because that's something that obviously, again, comes up a lot. I'm fascinated with. Is there anything else that you found rather than what you've just quickly explained?
Yeah, I mean, so many things, to be honest. I mean, from this, there's like 8 other courses. I already know the next book, because
Really?
Because, and it's huge. That's a huge revelation. But that's like, it's just like, as you go into, every zodiac sign, every part of astrology, really in depth, then you unravel like, mysteries and teachings, and it's like, it really is quite spectacular. And so this is the beauty of going through the journey, is that everybody will have their own remembrances, have their own understandings, and that things will be revealed to them. And that's what's exciting for me to hear, like, you went through it, so what came of that? And so, speaking about Alan Green, beautiful man, and he's so fun. And so this is how we connected, really, because as I was going through the Lost Octave, I'm then surprised to find that I'm seeing the recognition of certain numbers and certain codes that are connected to the Shakespearean mysteries. And it was only through Alan's work that I understood, that I knew these numbers, right? So it was, looking at somebody else's work, and then they're dropping, like, it's like he's bringing that transmission through, and then I'm seeing it from my lens. And so then I'm like, oh, that fits that astrological sign. Well, all of a sudden now you've got all of Shakespeare's works are now connected to astrology. And when I went deeper, there was codes in there that were so precise, that were like literally the secret of secrets of Shakespeare code, and the Knights Templar are linked in the DNA.
Ah, brilliant. That is so funny you say that, because I've literally, over the past week, come to that exact same conclusion. I kept having that thought that this is where it was going.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the Enochian table, all the angelic field and Metatronic, with Enoch and Metatron, and we can get onto those two as astrological signs afterwards. But so these numbers are all linked to like things like our solstice lines. So you have like the 624, number, which is prominent, that's all linked to John the Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
And John the Baptist is the summer solstice. And so, that's really where the Christ walks on water, right? Because the crab walks sideways.
Oh,
That's
right.
the crab. So on the summer solstice, you have 3 days, which is 72 hours, number 72 again. So the summer solstice is 3 days where the sun appears to move across the horizon. So it's not going up or down, it's going across. Well, like a crab, it walks. So that's the sun, Christ the Son, walking on water, right? Opposite that is Christmas, the winter solstice, right? And it's 3 days that Christ is in the tomb, right? So Christ is crucified, the Son is crucified, goes it on the 21st, then it goes into the tomb for 3 days, 72 hours, our magic number, and then the Son is resurrected. So now we've got John the Baptist and the Christ. Well, that's the winter and summer solstice. And so this is all linking, and this was encoded, this is all woven into Shakespeare. And this was all woven into Leonardo da Vinci's work. Right. This was woven into Michelangelo's paintings. And so like when I was seeing this, and that's why I spoke with Alan about and showed him this, and it was just like, wow, they really went, these people, these masters, these teachers that went into this, they really were encoding this wisdom into their works so that when the time was right, we would see it and reveal it and see all of that beautiful encryption that was there. And so again, this now, most people think of Shakespeare as just sort of poetic works, but it's like, there's a mystery school, and this now is linked to astrology and DNA. It's like how did they even know? Like the DNA codon wasn't even created then. So, were they receiving future wisdom like we are, encoding it into their time so that it's so mind baffling. It's just like, it's so beautiful, and like the King's Chamber is the Last Supper. Right. So like Leonardo da Vinci. And so the thing that was beautiful about that is, many things have been done about that. But when I put the astrological signs to the King's Chamber, right, and when Robert discovered those petroglyphs, then what was fascinating to me was I was thinking, well, we're looking at it from the location of where Aquarius is. So Leonardo da Vinci painted that painting standing from the perspective of the Aquarian age, which we are in now.
Mind blowing.
So it's not, this is what's so beautiful, is that it's like these subtle things that are so profound. Like, and most people don't even question, well, where is the artist standing from to paint that image?
Yes.
But when I was looking at the King's Chamber, I was like, well, he must be standing there in order to see that. Well, that means that he's standing literally in our time now. I mean, it's just like that sort of synchronicity is just beyond beautiful. And that's the sort of things that, as you say, every day, like I was just opening this, and it just makes it that universal field. And it shows how deep these, people were going into this, these artists, these musicians, these creators, and all these, esotericists. They were weaving all of this amazing stuff so that, like a present for us to unwrap and go, wow, like what a gift. And so that's what we're doing now also, weaving that in for future generations to unpack and move forward.
It is. I mean, I say that when I look at Alan's work, or when I read his book, and you look at it like you say, and you think, and again with the Vitruvian Man and the pyramids and everything, you just think, wow, how on earth, especially with the codes with Shakespeare, and you look at it and you think, how did they do this? But obviously you can see it's like you with the transmission. They were obviously, like you say, receiving information. And again, with the oracles that they had within certain spaces of the Knights Templar where the ley lines crossed, where you could then obviously get the information that would come in once you connected, give you a higher power. But then you think, right, okay, you know, we know there's a higher power, we know that, you know, everything's quantum, but is there anywhere that you have come across within what you're doing that you've come across any aspect of connection to extraterrestrials, or that kind of way that we're being pointed to?
Yeah, really good question. Yeah, I think it depends. You know, you can go through it however you know, whatever you want to look for, you're going to find, like 100%. So, for example, the astrological signs, which is not what a lot of people know of, obviously it's all stars. So then you have the galactic star connections.
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, it shows you, so I outlined where actually all the seven sisters of the Pleiades are.
Yes.
So, you know, there's most people go, oh, that's in Taurus. Yes, it's in Taurus, but it's also in other parts of the astrology. So there's that. Then obviously you've got the connection to where is Sirius in the Star Law story? Where is Arcturus in the Star Law story? You know, where is Antares? And so when you move into that, that's where you can apply your focus into, if that's what you want to receive or connect to that energy. Like, it's giving you point at that star and that's where you go. So that's like your ley line alignment, right? And so that's where I start to speak about the story. And for example, like the Christ story is so linked to Arcturus, it's unbelievable. And so I link that in the story because basically the Holy Grail, the you know, continuation of the potential bloodline and the sort of secret of Mary Magdalene having a child, etc., like that's all written in the stars, and it's very clear to read that story, like beyond doubt. And so, you know, it's like, well, is it all just symbolism? Is it something that actually happened? And it's like, well, that's for you to decide. Like, it's written in the stars, as above, so below. It was all encoded. It's encoded in Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, that Arcturus Grail story, right? So, like, there's no way that you can look at it and say, well, that's not showing you what's there. And so it's confirming and saying, like, yeah, like there was a continuation of the bloodline. It grew up, and that was part of the Christ story. It's reflected in the stars. And so, you know, as I say, you can go whatever level you want to about, if you want to connect into the angelic realms, it's got all the angelic connections there. If you want to connect into the galactics, you've got all the star law and where to go into it. And of course, like, I really put in this beautiful part in Aquarius, which is about the root races, which is really beautiful because that I did a sort of a brief history of the root races, which not a lot of people know of, because we are actually now in the time of the 6th root race. So that is what this Aquarian age is all about. And so people hear of things like, say, Lemurians or Atlanteans.
Yes.
And so, but they know that part, but they don't necessarily know the whole, and that they were root races, right? So the Lemurians were the 3rd root race, the Atlanteans were the 4th, our current humanity is the 5th, and then we are now in this 6th. And so this is why this move into Aquarius is not just a changing of an age, but it's a birthing of a new race, a new human, right? It's the Aquarian womb man, you know, it's that next evolution. And that's why we've been having things like, you know, indigo children and blue rays and crystal and rainbow and all that sort of energy moving through, is because that's sparked the speed of our evolution, so that then the parents are ready to birth those children that are coming of a completely different set of codes and understanding from other places that, you know, we haven't even seen yet. And also that's, you know, allowing us to upgrade, because in the book I speak about that the 6th root race, although there will be, you know, beings are being born, it's a consciousness. So you can upgrade yourself into the 6th root race consciousness, which is what this offering is about. And so then you get to understand these children, understand where we're moving. And so it's a, you know, whereas this disconnect of my child is so different, and my old way, how I grew up and my parenting, doesn't seem to work. And
Yes.
there's this disconnect. Now it's like you're both being trained, you know, the
Yeah.
child and you, and so we can move forward. So yeah, like things like that are beautiful in the book of like, so that's kind of like a sort of a galactic esoteric energy in there, you know. I think the beautiful thing about it is that we can, it births conversations because, you know, obviously in the book you've got people that maybe have no idea about galactic beings or angels, or they're just interested in astrology,
Yes.
right? So and so it's got it connects to everybody on those levels. But yeah, of course, when someone like yourself is like, oh, well, is there connections to, you know, this, those stars and those star races? Well, yeah, if you're a channel and you like to connect into that sort of thing, then I can give you the map and point you in the direction and go, that's where you should be connecting with. And so that's where it's like, now that's your part of the puzzle,
Yes.
bring through, you know, and to discover what you find. But I have felt myself, at times, the mathematical side of it, it's very Arcturian, like very, very, it's very like to the point. This is how
Yes.
it is, set like that, job
Yeah.
done, boom.
Yeah.
It's like on such a fast wave. And then, you know, that connection to Sirius is also can be like that, but it also has that more openness of just like, okay, now we know all these facts, like how do we open this and implement this?
Yes.
And that's really where the divine feminine is so important, because as we push forward in technology and, you know, understanding like binary codes and computers and everything is like very masculine in that, you know, left brain, you could say, thinking. That's why we need the feminine to be even more established, because, you know, we need to be able to integrate that. Otherwise, we're going to be divorced from each other, rather than using that information to be more related to each other. And so this is really the well, everybody knows this is the whole collective we're experiencing, right? Is that transition.
Wow. That we've been everywhere, haven't we? That was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, totally. And I can see, you know, your absolute passion behind it all. And for me, it's so interesting, Rob. So interesting.
Yeah, no, it is.
Yeah.
It's just so, that's why I'm so excited to share. You know, it's like even on the website, you know, I put a whole load of free stuff on there so people can understand like the deacons and start to get to know them and understand, you know, and understand where this is going, because it's just like, yeah, like it's going to be so, I can't wait to put it in people's hands and let them experience this and let them go into it and blossom into their particular way of using it and expanding on it. You know, it's sort of like, here it is, take it from there, you know. And so yeah, it's such a great journey, you know. I've been on it, and you know, still going through it, and it's just, as you say, ever unfolding. And yeah, it speaks for itself, really. It's just such a beautiful thing.
I can imagine that once, like you just said, once it's actually out there and it's in people's hands, the fact of what you're going to receive back from people with what happens to them and where they go is going to be boom. It's going to be astronomical, isn't it? It's
Oh, I hope so. That's
it
my, you know,
will be.
that's the prayer, you know. It's,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the inevitable thing is that whatever happens from getting the book and going through it, you will be changed, because you can't not be. It's got that sort of like magnetic pull, because out of all of the star stories that are there, because they are, that's why the book is called Our Story in the Stars, because, you know, we think of the stars are up there and the zodiac's up there, but it's, they are us, we are it. And so it's all the collective archetypes of the collective consciousness that you're reading. And so this is where every movie, every fairy tale, every, you know, everything you've ever read, it's all star stories. And so there will be something in there that you will read that will touch you on such a deep level that even if you just got that one thing from it, then for me it's like, it's such a beautiful way to do it, you know, sharing stories like we used to do, you know, like around the campfires, looking up at the stars, and how we teach children through story and images, and we build the dreamscape so we can learn it instantly. And that's why I say that this book is like instant integration, because I mean, you might need to go back over it and like just kind of take a breath, because every
Yes.
sentence is like, it's like packed. I mean, you read a paragraph and that could be your meditation for the whole day.
Yeah.
um but it somehow, it just go, you go, yes, okay, like there's a lot of stuff, but okay, I get it. And you just keep going through, and then it's like at the end it's like, well, okay, that's this, oh my god, I went through that.
Mm.
That's the story of my life. And it's like, yeah, it was all there, it was all written there. And it's not that sort of, it's all pre-made for you, but in a way it kind of, it's like there's a path that's laid out. And that's why I say knowing the end at the beginning. And it's like saying you're going to end up there, but how you go through that journey is going to be your free will choices.
Mm-hmm.
And so, this is where the stories help shape, like, oh, if I knew that at this point in my life, I'm going to go into the dark night, or I have to go into the dungeon, I have to go through a rebirth, then you've got pointers to say like, okay, this is obviously that time. And, everybody does it every year. This is the funny thing, is that we actually go through everybody else's zodiac story every year. And so really you just have to learn 1 year, one set of zodiac signs, understand the stories, and that then repeats every single year as a pattern. And so then you can start to understand how you work with the month of May, how you work with the month of September, like what happens in your story and you. And so it's a beautiful way to give us back rather than the stars or the planets are impacting us and we're having to ride the lunar waves or Mercury retrograde, or it's like, okay, when this happens, that's part of my story and I go through it now like this. And so I know to rest, or I know to not take on that challenge, or I can plan my life and move in sync with Mother Earth and the elements and the stars. And so that is the ancient wisdom coming back, that universal science.
Yes.
And yeah, and that's really what the book is trying to bring, that Venusian energy, trying to bring it back into our conscious co-creations.
Amazing. And when you talk about the Venusian energy, that obviously you touch on Tesla as well at the same time. So
Yeah, well, that's the triple DNA. So yeah, I'll just say it briefly, but it was just exactly like I was going, looking at the frequencies and and looking at the DNA, and and then when I was doing the numbers and looking at it all, it's like, wow, like that the 3-strand DNA that, it's like, well, that hasn't been proven yet. It doesn't exist in science. Okay, but we know that consciousness always precedes measurement. So when we can perceive into the future of what is there, then we can know where to measure it and where to look for it. Like I said, it's a soup. So doing this, when you find the harmonic numbers, you can see that there is the potential for that 3rd strand DNA. And those 3 numbers are 3, 6, and 9. Well, I mean, that when I was doing it, the calculations, and I see it, and I'm like, so the triple helix DNA is 3, 6, and 9. I'm like, so maybe Tesla was trying to tell us that. Maybe it's not about the electric energy out there. Maybe he discovered that this was the key to the DNA. And so it's like, wow, like how deep did he go, on this level? But yeah, it's all harmonics, it's all, and that's why I say that when you know octaves, when you know music and how they apply as universal laws, everything fits so beautifully,
it's like what I was thinking the other day, it's exactly that. And I was thinking about the 369 scenario, and then realized that it's 18, and obviously in gematria, in 18 it means life.
Beautiful. Makes so much sense, because 9, obviously 72, the master gate for this is, it's a 9. And so really when you start to look at nines, because, you know, if I just say it, the law of octaves is that if you take any, this is a really fun thing to do, that you can try this at home, is you take any mathematical equation, or you want to add something together, well, you can replace any number 9 with the number 0, and you can replace any number 0 with the number 9. And numerically, in numerology, when you pull that into its digital root, it comes out the same number. So 0 and 9 is the same, right? And so, well, that's crazy, because every geometric shape adds up to 9. Or does that mean that, so that means every form actually ends up equaling to 0? That's really holographic, because it's like what we think is matter, you know, as we know, it's 99.9% space. So all of this understanding, I say, we move away from that, the densities, and move into light understandings. We can start to see that this is, you know, the fabric of the universe is really expressed as like these 9, this 9 fractal. And so that's why 9's special. It really is one of those real amazing numbers, because it links to 0, the octave, the O of octave, the 0 point, the feminine, the wheel, the dance. And so it's so beautiful. Every number you can have a journey with, you know, like number 1, you know, the law of polarity. And it's like you can go through all of this and just be like, I am receiving and understanding things on a level that I just never even looked at before. You know, numbers, not just a quantity, but, you know, a consciousness of teaching. And so, yeah, number 9 is it's a super special one. And that's really where all this, you know, and even the Venus star, it's 8 points with the 9th is the center, the 0 point. So everywhere you look, you know, it's all telling you the same story. And if we can catch on to these threads, which is what I've given in the book, then you, yeah, it's going to be amazing how people apply this to all different things.
I can't wait for people obviously starting to message you and send you all this information that you're going to get, that how much it will have changed people's perspectives, awareness, their lives. I'm sure they're going to be having many activations through it as well. I know they are, for sure.
Yeah, I really hope so. You know, it's, as I say, really, it's been a great, you know, a continual journey that I'm on with it. But it's like, I knew that this book is like, this is for other people. Like, it's, you know, some books are sort of like your own journey. They're sort of like your book going out of what you learned. This book was so different. It was, you know, it was sort of like, no, this is to give to people. Like, this is a gift for them. And so, you know, with all the tools, with everything, full transparency. And so, yeah, I mean, you know, as they say, if you can help one person, you know, it's so worth it. And so, you know, I love to hear how people interpret it and what they're doing with it. And I think it's just it's going to be a catalyst for people to birth their own things, and, you know, with this, you know, with this knowledge.
That is for sure. For sure. Well, I will say, like, thank you, because I think we've blown everybody's mind, mine included.
Oh, good.
And I thank you, because I honestly know, and I say no, not believe, that what you are putting out there is a massive gift for humanity and for the collective consciousness. It is huge. And I thank you for being able to work with it, bring it through, and do what you've needed to do. And from what you've said, obviously, this is no way is this the end. If you were just talking about your another book and where you're going to be going with it, this sounds like, to me, it's just the beginning, and what a beginning.
Yeah, I would say it's hit the ground running for sure. And no, thank you so much for saying that, and also for seeing, you know, seeing the work and myself and the intention, you know, that's behind it. You know, it's not, my intention has always been to help people and to empower people as much as I could, if there was any way I could do it. And, you know, it's not for me, you know, it's for everyone to see it. And yeah, you know, this really is the beginning. You know, there'll be an online course to go through this and into more detail, and to actually have interactions to speak about this, because there's so many portals that we've been through today. You know, there's so many things to
Yeah.
talk about. So, you know, that will all be coming off the back of this. And that's why I say it's like a movement. I never knew understood why when I kept on writing it, like this movement. But that's the way it feels. It feels like it's, you know, jump on the train and it's going in this direction. And it's such a beautiful way to do it as well. Like, it's not, you know, I think that's the artistry, isn't it? Is like how we move through something with grace, like how we move through all of this trouble and confusion and all of the negative things that are happening,
Yes.
like how we choose to move through it. We can do that in a really beautiful, self-empowered way. And of course, Venus being in Leo, that started this whole thing, she's the sovereignty goddess, you know, in Leo. She's the queen. And so it's like, we can do this with grace. We can do it with our inherent royalty, inner royalty of our soul. And, you know, I just think that it's so beautiful what the future is holding for us, you know, as I peer through the lens of astrology and see what is in our star story. All I can say is that these white wings are going to sprout from our backs in our etheric body, and we are going to move into that angelic human consciousness. And that's really the future of what I've seen in the stars.
Wow. Amazing. Oh, I'm literally blown away.
Huh.
Thank you so much. And I really do understand now why my little angel friend Alan, bless him, put us two together. And I've enjoyed the journey that we've gone on. It's fascinating, Rob, and I thank you so much. And what I ask of everybody is that, would you please share this video, because I know that you will have enjoyed it. And obviously this information needs to be out there to as many people as possible to get Rob's book out there, because it will change literally humanity on a huge, huge scale. So please share it. Please like it, because again, that puts it out there into the YouTube multiverse, as I call it. And subscribe if you've not already subscribed. And I thank you for everybody who's watched this today. I will put all of Rob's details in the link below in the description, and all his previous YouTube interviews that he's done as well, because obviously to watch every aspect that he talks about, because what we've spoken today is a little different, I think, from what Rob's done before. So it's worth watching all of them. And also I'll put the link to your book. And I'm sure once I've got your book in my hand, I'm going to be coming on again to speak to everybody about what I found, because I've already got a long list from our discussion as it is. So I say thank you very much. And I look forward to speaking with you again soon, Rob. Thank you. Thank you to everybody else.